Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am very excited for this one. We got John rejoining us. We got Sara rejoining us. We got Isaac rejoining us. We got Shaun here as always, and I am pumped. Now, while I am stoked, y'all should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, Fridays for The Collective and Wednesdays for The Gold Mine. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, put them up in the comments section and we can hit those throughout the show. Other than that, let's get into some intros. And John, you're on top. I'm going to hit you first. 10, 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff.
Awesome. I am John Dailey. I am from the States. Spent most of my life in the Marine Corps and Special Operations, and now I've spent the second half of my life, or adult life at least, as working with Marine Corps Special Operations as a training and education director. In my fun time, I run ultramarathons, which aren't really fun, and do a lot of writing.
I love it. And got an awesome book out, I hear. I've been hearing all kinds of good things about your book. So I'm looking forward to reading it, man. Sara, how about yourself?
Hey, Sara McMann. I was born in DC and I've lived kind of all over the East Coast. Actually, I've kind of lived all over the United States. And I'm a former wrestler, former pro fighter. Right now, I am venturing more into coaching and counseling, and I'm taking classes to get my CMPC so I can do some more sports psychology.
Awesome.
Yeah, so my name is Isaac Miller. I am from Kansas City, Missouri, and I am a Marine Corps veteran turned entrepreneur. So I run Prolific Health and Fitness and Prolific Therapy Clinic, where we kind of fuse functional fitness and rehabilitation with longevity and wellness. And I also help run a entrepreneurial kind of business coaching program where we help just entrepreneurs within the fitness space grow their businesses. And I really try and focus on helping, military members who are transitioning out to find that purpose and find that mission outside of the military, and doing so in a way where they can, make a living for their families and still provide value to other people.
Man, I love it. Shaun, how's life out in the mountains treating you?
Things are good. What a great panel. Whatever we're going to talk about today is grounded in experience. That's what I see with this panel. So let's see where it goes.
I'm liking this. So we're going to be talking about having fun. And like I was saying in the green room right before we got started, my first thoughts on this initially were, the military and fighting and sometimes gym culture can be looked at as very, very serious. And I actually just recently saw a video on Instagram where a guy was complaining about people laughing on the jiu-jitsu match. And it's like, no, this is a very serious place. You shouldn't be laughing. But I was like, isn't the point kind of to have fun and learn at the same time? But I want to get your guys' first thoughts on having fun within your life, within the communities you guys have been in. John, you're on top. I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
All right. So when I got the email this morning that said we were going to talk about fun, I was like, man, I really need to think about this. And the one thing that I absolutely know is that, and I think runs across the military, probably across, high achievers, is that there's two types of fun, right? There's type 1 fun, and that's like where you actually have fun, like doing fun things. And type 2 fun is when you do things that kind of suck, but they're fun when they're over, or they're fun when you complete them. So I think a lot of us probably have a similar idea of fun in that, it's not meaningless, right? It's not mindless. It's achieving something that's difficult. So, and I think a lot of people may not, view those things as fun. Like I said, after I retired from the Marine Corps, I needed something to get into, and got into ultramarathons. And I used to run a lot of them. I haven't run as many lately, but I don't know that I ever had fun while I was running one, or thought, hey, this is really fun. But when it was over, it was a blast, right? The stories that you had to tell, the experiences were a lot of fun. So the one thing I did realize is that I do not have a lot of mindless fun, and I probably owe myself some of that, something that's fun simply for fun's sake, in the near future.
maybe just a little bit, but also that
Yeah.
the type 2 fun, man, like that, it takes you, I find it lasts that much longer. You get to enjoy it over longer periods of time. Sara, what's your first thoughts on this?
So when it comes to having fun during training, I realized, especially as I started coaching little kids, and I realized that I was like where fun comes to die. Like I had a hard time making wrestling, which is so, exhausting and painful, fun for the kids. So that was like a real challenge. But I think that I would describe wrestling to people who are doing it, to be more honest with them, that it is really satisfying, but it's never going to be like roller coaster fun. It's going to be like I've accomplished something really deeply meaningful, and that kind of fun and that kind of enjoyment. But you will have too, like in every group, when you guys work hard together, you do need those little like brief moments of, like someone cuts in with a joke or someone does something stupid and everybody kind of like laughs at the guy who is running around and like trips over the mat, even though there's nothing in front of them or whatever, like you just need those moments of relief. I think as far too, like as the people they're the video of like people laughing during jiu-jitsu. I think with that, I mean, I'm kind of torn on that too, because I definitely believe, especially jiu-jitsu, it's a little bit slower pace, is a little less intense when you're in the gi. So you do have moments that you can think and laugh. And, there are just funny things that happen when two people are grappling. But also like, it shouldn't be ever to the degree that you are like making other people's experiences unenjoyable. And I think the same thing, like if I went to a movie theater, we were all watching a movie, everybody will laugh at the funny parts. But if I laugh through like the whole movie, no matter how much I'm enjoying it, I'm probably kind of, distracting other people's experience of that movie. So I kind of have a little bit of a balance of that. Like, yeah, definitely have fun and laugh, but like not to the other people's, detriment.
I like that. Got to have a balance to it, right? This is awesome. Isaac, what are your first thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a great topic. One of our core values for Prolific is literally like fun. Because if it's not fun, why are you doing it? If you're meaning to do this for the long haul, and yes, there's a level of the overarching mission or vision needs to be something that's important enough for you to want to dedicate a mass amount of sacrifice for. But that doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice your like just willingness to enjoy a moment because the vision is too important, right? And so for me, it reminds me of like in the military, the worst times were also the times where humor, like you remember the humor and like the jokes that were made, as maybe grotesque as they were, just caused that kind of somber moment to stop, and like everyone laughed, and those are the memories you remember. And when times are tough and whatever it is that you're doing, for me, fun is being able to find these small enjoyments, whether it's a joke or it's a memory or you just take a break and do something different. It's, for me, that's fun, because especially life of entrepreneurship, you're working 16 18-hour days for nonstop on end. And, I remember deployment where it was like, it was the jokes and the humor that the guys had that caused that to be enjoyable. So I try and bring that, now to the business place where, my employees, which many of them are vets, we can get through tough times here because of just being able to joke and laugh and have a good time while we're working.
Yeah, there is something to the absurdity of life as well. Sometimes in those situations, especially overseas, where you're just like, I got nothing else. Let's just laugh about it. Shaun, you got some first thoughts on this?
Yeah, it was what you said about the BJJ moment where someone is, thinking that this is a really serious event, and someone else on the mat is thinking it's less serious of an event. And that contrast between two humans, I think, comes from a couple of things. One is perhaps a person's inability to read the room or synchronize with the room. The other one is perhaps the culture just hasn't been set within the room previously. And so someone can saunter in and not read a room and not know the culture and think it's time to laugh when it isn't. But that's not their fault. That's who they are. They're just having fun. And I'll use myself as an example, because when I guess I started BJJ 9 years ago, and when I first got on the mats, I had lots of martial arts experience and have my way about me. I have a certain mentality. And so I didn't know much BJJ, and I was getting my ass whooped. But while it was getting whooped, I'd be chirping. I'd be talking to the guy like, yeah, that ain't going to happen. No, I don't think so, pal. And I'd just be like having a little bit of fun, poking, prodding, amusing me, but trying to interact with my partner to like bring down the tension of the moment, as it were. And some partners don't appreciate that. And my coach said to me, hey, Shaun, you know what? Some guys just don't want to hear you chirping in their ear. And I said, okay, no worries, I'll drop it. And I dropped it. I've never really done it since. That was a long, long time ago that I haven't done it since, except when I'm with a partner who I sync with, who I vibe with, who knows my rhythm, who knows that I'm going to poke and prod and chirp and have a bit of fun, not like mean-spirited, but just enjoy life, man. We're not fighting to the death. And if we were, I'd still be laughing. So I think that it comes down to reading the room and knowing the culture in order to have, I'm going to air quote this, appropriate fun. And so what is appropriate fun? I think, like, if I step onto the mat and it's all about me, I'm the center of the universe and I don't care what anyone else thinks, I can have all the fun in the world, but then I'm not interacting with the world. So it's all of our individual jobs, I believe, to figure out what we like when we're having fun, and then inject that into the group that's standing in front of us in a way that is cool, rather than being a goof, rather than being an irritant, rather than being a jerk, rather than being mean-spirited at everyone else's expense because you're the center of the universe. We can all figure it out. We've all figured it out all throughout our lives, and we know when we're doing it wrong. And if we don't know when we're doing it wrong, which is rare, then someone can step up and let us know, which is what my coach did to me.
Yeah, I think this is an important point too, in the fact that people, I know I certainly went into my studio looking at it from a point of view of like, I want to be here to enjoy the place. So I was looking at the culture immediately upon joining that particular gym. But there are a lot of misconceptions, right? When you first go into a place and you're like, all right, I'm going to be here to train, and you're watching people laugh and have a jovial time, and you're like, that's not really what I want to do, but it might be what you need in the moment. And I'm wondering if you guys have ever come across any other like misconceptions when it comes to having fun in ultra endurance, in high stakes careers, in, Olympic trials, all these things where it's kind of do or die. But if you're, in my mind, if you're not having fun doing it, it kind of reflects on your capabilities in the moment. So I'm wondering, any misconceptions? Sara, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, that it kind of reminded me of a memory. In 2003, the women's team had a locker room across the hall from the men's team. And this was in New York City, Madison Square Garden. And so we were all under tremendous pressure, like, competing on our soil. We were all like very good prospects. And our team, we were like blaring, I think it was Beyonce. Like, we were just kind of back there in between rounds, listening to music, dancing. And I think that we just needed that relief of tension. Like, it's so serious. I had a 2-time world champion, the first match, like, so right out of the gates, we were all wrestling very tough people, and we wanted to look good. We wanted to look good in front of the fans that came to watch us and our friends and family and stuff. So we were all trying to like really have fun and relieve pressure. And we found out later that the men's team, that they could overhear some of our music, and they were not at all appreciative, but it's like, okay, well, put on headphones, listen to something that you want to do, because our whole team, like both teams are valuable. You want to have both teams do well, but we needed something to relieve that pressure in a different way. And we didn't know at the time. If they said, hey, can you guys kind of turn it down just a little bit? We'd have been like, yeah, no problem, because we wanted the men's team to do well too, but nobody let us know. We just kind of like got under their skin. But I was like, did we get under their skin? They listen to music every single day in practice, or were they just already irritated because of the pressure of the situation? And that's probably most likely it. But we actually performed the best that we had ever performed. And we all took a really lighthearted attitude towards an event that was like extremely important to us. And we performed better for it.
It's a great point. And little did you know, there was soundproofing put into the change rooms the next year.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Isaac, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that when looking at misconceptions, and I've never done an ultra endurance sport. I mean, I wrestled and I did, jiu-jitsu and martial arts, but I can't really say what it's like to run 100-mile race per se. But when it comes to like running a business or, just doing some kind of hard endeavor, especially with a team, there seems to be this misconception that it's like, you are 100% like zoned in and nothing else matters. And honestly, that kind of mindset, as Sara pointed out, they needed that kind of lighthearted approach. And oftentimes it's the people who take things way too seriously that end up ruining those moments for everyone around them. And nothing, and I'm sure John can speak to this, training for ultra endurance. I'm sure he even had some kind of support system in that. And if he was just an a-hole through the entire thing, he probably wouldn't have made it through because he would have no support system. And so as a business owner, I want to make sure that we're not getting too serious and too like kind of inundated into the process, because then you end up losing the essence of esprit de corps, that thing, that spirit of the team. So I think a big misconception is that it's super serious. And then the other misconception, at least for entrepreneurship, is that it's just all, daisies and rainbows and vacations and jets and everything. And it's like, no, not at all. Like that's not the fact either. It's not just, have fun doing whatever you want all the time. It takes serious work ethic. And there are times to be serious. But within the process, you have to be able to break out of that seriousness and bring some fun in so that your team stays your team.
Yeah, and nothing will pull a team apart like just a whole bunch of jerks who will not work together. John, you got thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Isaac kind of hit it right off the bat that, the more tense the situation, the more often, fun somebody to kind of play the fool for a minute is needed. In combat, that people would be surprised how frequently guys are giggling, going through a house with terrorists, behind the door. Something funny is going to happen, and recognizing that and being able to create a moment within the team. And I think a lot of times in those situations, the humor is kind of tripled or quadrupled because it's in a situation that's so high stress. And you mentioned like support in ultra marathons. I've watched, there are a lot of people that run them. Mostly I don't have friends that would just sign up to go hang out with me, for like 24 hours while I run. But there are people that are much faster than me that have like a support crew that, meets them. And I've watched like just these people, kind of belittle and badger and treat their support team, very, very badly. And, I couldn't do it. I couldn't cruise somebody that was being an asshole to me the whole time. Some of it's understandable. They're having a hard time. They're 80 miles to a 100-mile race or whatever the case is. But even in those times, I think it's very important to, even if you don't really mean it, to come in and crack a joke or do something to kind of lighten the situation. And most often when you do, you realize that it kind of elevates your own mood.
Could not agree more with that one. Sometimes you got to force a smile just to get somebody else to smile, which then makes that smile a little bit more real in my mind. Shaun, you got any points on this?
I do got a couple. I think, first of all, maybe separating fun from fun. And so there's fun in the moment, and then there's fun as a coping mechanism. And so, like John said, when things are going like totally sideways and the pressure is on and it's millisecond by millisecond, sometimes humor is a coping mechanism in that moment. It's not like anyone's working on their stand-up comedian act in that moment. What it is kind of a coping mechanism. Whereas there's another kind of fun, and that's just the laughing my arse off kind of fun in the middle of a meadow in the sunshine because I just saw something redonkulous happen. Maybe a donkey fell over. Who knows? Who cares? But it's fun. It's fun to see. It's fun to experience. There's no pressure on in the moment. It's just a random slice of life that makes you laugh. So there's fun and there's fun. And so given that there's a spectrum of fun, it's our job to, I believe, and I'm playing with what John said with crews, ultra endurance crews. It could be as easily translated onto the wrestling mats as a coach or as a entrepreneur in a business working redonkulous hours. It's all the same. The fun spectrum is calibrated by the moment and the individual's sensitivity to the moment. So using Sara as an example, as a longtime coach, highly experienced, sees the story between the lines rather than having to read the lines. So she can look at the moment in a millisecond and know the right thing to say or the right thing not to say. Either stand there and smile or stand there and laugh. Maybe stand there stern. All of these moments require sensitivity, understanding the culture of the moment, whether that's a newbie that she's looking at or a longtime Olympian that she's looking at. She's going to have the sensitivity for the moment for the fun spectrum. And I can say the same for anyone on the panel right now. Now, to give a practical example, talking about ultra endurance crews, because it kind of plays into what we're talking about here in the sense of fun. I've done a lot of ultra endurance races and I've crewed quite a few. And whenever I was crewing for like big races like world championships, I had one rule. I'm running the pit. I'm running the show. If you don't like it, find someone else. Because what can happen in a crew is everyone really wants to help. Everyone really wants to be involved in helping John run around the planet 10 times. And so if everyone's chirping and everyone's trying to run their little fun factor game, and if they don't know John well enough, or they haven't been enough crews, or they haven't got the sensitivity in life to understand when to say something and when not to say something, when to help and when not to help, and all of that good stuff, it's done poorly. And so crews can fall apart like that. In an hour, a crew can disintegrate. And I've seen crews actually get up and leave events and leave the athlete. And so sensitivity to the moment, to the culture that's been set prior, and understanding that there is a fun factor to play with, coping mechanism versus actual fun stuff. These are things that we get to play with as humans, either as coaches or as noobs, unaware that there's actually a spectrum and timing and sensitivity. And we've all botched it. In our youth, we've all botched it. I've botched it a ton of times. I still botch it from time to time. I don't read the room for the right moment. And so everyone can do it better, but to do it better, you've got to understand that it's not just a simple word called fun.
I like that. Sara, what do you got?
So in my coaching experience, especially being at the high level competitions, one trick that I try to employ is I let the athlete be the initiator of the fun. And I do this because if I try to initiate it when they are feeling a certain way, like maybe I just can't exactly read how they're feeling, and I think it will cut the tension, I could always be wrong and come across looking like this isn't really important. And I'm just kind of here like, this is a cool thing I'm going to do on the weekend. And I'm not as serious and invested in stuff like that. So I think a lot of times, like with wrestling and especially fighting, it's very, very serious. And I don't crew anybody, but like cornering people and, being training partners and stuff. I've tried to mirror what that athlete is doing, but let them make the joke. And then I respond and maybe, a little shoot something back, but kind of put it a little bit more in them to determine if the mood is right for fun or if the mood is like, I'm about to vomit, like I don't want to be. So that's just something that I've tried to do more. Even if somebody's really tense, I don't know if joking will actually be the right thing. Even if they need it, I don't know how they'll interpret it. And I don't want anything to take away from what they're doing. But I also will say this, short of like actual something like seriously criminal, I don't think I would ever really like abandon an athlete. I mean, I just coached an Olympic gold medalist, Amit Allure. And I told her, I was like, man, I don't care. I know you're going to be under so much intense stress and pressure, and you might act in ways that you've never acted before. You might break up with your boyfriend. You might fire me as a coach. You might go off on things you've never done. We're going to work through it. I was like, maybe afterwards, I'm going to be like, hey, this is where I draw the line. I'll set some boundaries, like whatever. But during the competition, I think I would just probably more eat it and then say, hey, I'm not under that stress. They are under that stress. I will then address it and say, if you got to get somebody else, if that's the way you act in this situation, you got to get somebody else. I'm not for you. But
I like it though. Like you're biasing towards empathy, right? In the moment of just, okay, cool. You may have said that. We'll get through it afterwards. But I like that. It's a good start.
I've been under that kind of pressure where the emotions get like your own emotions get almost out of your control because you care so much, like I've kind of been there. So I do feel like sometimes caring so much can bring out crazy thoughts in our heads. But I say like, okay, in that moment, you're going to get a pass. We're going to talk about it. And I'm going to give you a piece of my mind probably too. So.
I love it. Shaun, what do you got?
I think that's great advice, but it's great advice coming from an experienced coach. And so I'm not the but part isn't to diminish anything you said because it's exactly what needs to be said. However, that's not going to work for everyone who is at your level. I'll loosely frame it up as. And so intense competition as an individual is, of course, different than intense competition as a team. And so the more people that are involved in the situation, if the crew is really big, it's more complex, it's more complicated, it's more nuanced, and there's more opportunity for things to go sideways. Now, to pull the crew down to just a single individual helping in the moment, let's say it's just Sara and the competitor, and there's no other distractions. Sara can still be a pain in someone's arse if it's her first day as a coach, but she isn't. And so she's got a ton of tools to rely on, all of the tips and tricks to fall back on. And so she can read the moment for what it is, make really good decisions, and then deal with the outcome at the end of it as a seasoned veteran. But that isn't everyone. And so there is a spectrum of response. Sara's response is an experienced response. But if anyone's listening to this and they're new to the game, year 1, year 2, year 3 of coaching or whatever the case is, and you're thinking that you can play it like Sara or John or Isaac or myself or Chance, maybe. But keep an open mind to there's many ways to skin a cat, as the old saying goes, and you've kind of got to learn your way. And don't simply grab at Sara's approach and think that's the way it's done, because that's what Olympians do. It is what they do. but other Olympians will do it differently, just as 2 year into the coaching game will do it differently. So just keep an open mind and see what else is coming down the pipeline here in the podcast.
That is a fantastic point. I want to go around on that point. Isaac, what do you got?
Yeah, no, I absolutely love this. And this is something that I work with mentees a lot. But I guess to preface, I do a lot of bodybuilding coaching. And so getting to someone to like really elite levels of body fat and muscle mass, and for all intents and purposes, it's a dumb sport, but I love the science of it. So I kind of found myself coaching it. But I often remind, the athletes, because you get to these levels of body fat where your brain doesn't get all the nutrients it needs to get. So it kind of goes into this sympathetic nervous response pretty much 24/7. You're not sleeping right. You're short tempered. Everything's tough. And I remind them that you are in a position where you are voluntarily starving yourself and overexerting energy to get on stage in essentially your underwear and pose in front of people. Like, you have no permission to be an a-hole to your wife or to your husband or to your kids or to your friends or to me or to the rest of the team. If you're going to be like that, you don't have a place here. That really goes into setting the culture from the forefront and leading by example. And this is something that then I get to with my mentees who are kind of running their own coaching businesses or own their own gyms, where, it's the culture is set by you. And if you are too serious, the culture will be too serious. If you are more fun, the culture will be fun. Both of those will extract the exact same result at the end of the day. But I can tell you from experience, the one that's fun is one of the integral parts of the culture, ends up going further longer, because it's that person who loves to walk will walk farther than the person who just loves the destination. If you love the journey and the journey's fun for you and fun for everyone else involved, you're going to go further than the person who's just caring about like the exit of the company. And so you have to set the culture. And if people don't fit that culture, you can get rid of them. And that might sound insensitive, but like, if again, your vision is to impact, 1,000 athletes, and you have a coach who's just kind of the Debbie Downer that kind of sucks the energy from everyone, why have them on your team? That's going to make it harder for you to impact 1,000 people. So get rid of them. And then when I have, entrepreneurs actually do it, and they replace that person with someone that gels with the culture, and they're fun and they're joking and they're lighthearted, but they're actually, like, when they do their job, they take their job seriously. Suddenly it's like, man, I should have done this a long time ago. It's like, well, yeah, you should have. So understand that fun, if it's a part of your culture, you have to be the example of that. You have to lead from the front and show what parameters of fun looks like for your team.
That is a fantastic point. I think especially your own personal culture of how you're going to lead, how you're going to run things, how you're going to do stuff. But on top of that, you have this, I guess, capacity to affect those people around you. And if you're not aware of that, then it can go sideways very quickly. John, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Absolutely. I think, there's a lot, really. I think absolutely what Sara is saying is right. I mean, in that moment with an elite athlete who's under a tremendous amount of stress, you've got to, allow them to lead, how they want to be led to a certain degree. When that elite athlete is an a-hole, and then, they're an a-hole the next match or meet, and then they're, then at a certain point you have to make the decision. Hey, maybe I'm not the right person to be helping you. And that's one of the things with ultras that always struck me. It's the same people, time and time again, and it's their wife who's out, at 2 a.m, they're trying to tie their shoes for them, and they're being an a-hole to the wife. I'm like, man, I would, my wife would have left me long ago. So, but when you move that out into a team, it absolutely comes into the leadership, culture within the team. There's one of my favorite quotes that Isaac said is, the person who loves to walk will walk a lot farther than the person who loves to get to the destination. And I've always with, as I'm very fortunate that as a young guy coming up, I was in teams that had a somewhat of a culture of yeah, it's real serious stuff that we do, but there's fun involved. And so, I learned from that and was able to try to integrate that when I reached the point where I had my own teams. And absolutely, we would laugh at some of the more wildly inappropriate times and wildly inappropriate things. And in most cases, it's exactly what the collective needed to refocus and regroup and get our heads back on straight and ready for the next thing. So, and I do now, my coaching is more performance coaching and some executive and leadership coaching. And at no point are any of these leaders that I work with, they're not getting ready to walk onto a mat, right? Or they're not, the decisions that they're making are, a little further lead time. So there's no excuse to be an a-hole, right? And I happen to be in a position where I can walk out at, at any moment if that's, but I do think establishing, expectations early on, whether you're working with an athlete or an executive or a military team or whomever, that, hey, here's the kind of culture that we want, and a culture that has some level of fun. If it's not fun to be a part of the group, then it's drudgery, and nobody likes that.
Yeah, and you'll do less hard work in a drudgery filled area than you will in a really enjoyable. It can still be really hard. It can still be very serious, but if it's not enjoyable to even do the job itself, it becomes a bit of an issue. And also something, Isaac, you brought up earlier, it just clicked in my head, is that skills can always be taught, right? Like proficiency and stuff like that can be built, but trying to mingle cultures of having someone who is completely not built for the style of team that you're in, I think is a really important aspect of it as well. Because if somebody is a lower level performer, they can be brought up, at least in my mind, versus having someone who is a higher performer affect the rest of the team, because I think that's going to affect the team performance overall. So at least in my mind. Shaun, you got any additional thoughts on this?
I do. So while I was listening, a little moment in my head popped in, and it's going to help maybe create another spectrum, if you will. So I was at a world championship, wherever, it doesn't matter. It's not relevant to the story. I had an athlete. I was there coaching or running the crew. I had several athletes at that event, and they came through, and the weather was atrocious. And by atrocious, I mean it rained 26 hours in the 24 hours of the event. And so it was bonkers and cold and whatever, ridiculous. The athlete came in. It's about 0200 in the morning, and they've been at it for about 14 hours. And they're a little fuzzy, I'll say that. And they need to get another layer of clothing on. But to get a layer of clothing on, they have to strip off the layer of clothing, just some leg warmers and arm warmers, in order to put on a jacket and some proper pants. And they can't work their hands, they can't work their brain, their eyes are a little cross-eyed, and I'm trying to help them out. And they're struggling, and they're having a moment, and they're kind of not lashing out, but they're, maybe acting out a little bit. Anyway, in the moment, frickin' broke my little finger as I was trying to take off the leg warmers. Just frickin' crank at a 90 degree. And I put it back in place, and then I continued on doing what I was doing, got them dressed out, got them out onto the course. They were completely unaware of what had happened. And the only reason that I could tell them the story after the fact was because someone was shooting video on me as I was coaching the athlete through the pit. And that was pretty common. Lots of video shot. So it wasn't like they were waiting for me to break my finger. So after the event, I said, hey, so let's just talk about this. We need to do this better in the future. I said, if my broken finger is an evidence of that could have gone smoother, then et cetera, et cetera. So we got to talk about it. And so the moment that things are fun, that individual thought they were having fun as they were clowning around. But the consequences was they broke their freaking coach's finger. And they didn't mean to, of course, but our actions have consequences. So if we want to clown around, then find the right time to clown around. Maybe not at a big race at 0200 hours in the morning when you're cross-eyed. So know the right time to have a bit of fun. Now, I'm thinking about John, as he was saying, there are times in the military when things go a little sideways, and it's not like it has to default to humor, but humor can bubble up. And it's kind of a dark humor, I understand, but that's what we do. That's how we cope. It's like the coping mechanism of the fun spectrum versus the actual knee slap, ha ha, because the donkey fell over, random moment. And so the spectrum of incidents within any event is based on our experience in the past. If that's our first event, and that's the first time we've broken our little finger, it's a big deal. If it's not our first event, and if we've broken lots of fingers in the past, it's not a big deal. So we have to know who we are. We have to know the moment. We have to understand there's a spectrum. Fun isn't just one thing. That's my thought.
I'm liking where this is going. And I have a question basically on that, is the fact of how do we find the right balance? How do we find the way to enjoy the process, working towards whatever it is, the goal that we're going after, especially when it's tough, especially when we're cross-eyed, especially when we're just completely out to lunch. And I was saying this the other day, was the fact that, I love jujitsu, and it created this, initially when I first started, was I was enjoying it all. I was in on it. I was this and I that, and I wanted to do these things and watching all the videos and all that stuff. But it came from a sense of the fact that I was getting pretty good at it, and I was starting to understand it, and I was starting to beat people. And I was like, yeah, I'm starting to win. But what's changed over time was the fact that I now just enjoy jiu-jitsu. I love being on the mat. I love figuring out the puzzle. That's the fun part for me. So if there's a tap or there's a break or the time runs out, whatever, I don't get to do jiu-jitsu anymore. And that's not as great. For me, finding that process in the midst of the role of figuring out that puzzle, that was the fun part for me that I've been able to utilize to go through some of the tougher aspects of it. And I'm wondering what what you guys have found overall. John, I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't get off mute. Well, the one thing I think everybody will probably agree on is that winning is always more fun than losing, right? And being good is always more fun than being bad. So, I definitely think that, regardless of the sport or the activity, a culture that's centered around getting better is you can have fun when you're doing that. I've seen, and it's kind of become like a thing in the States. Even when my kids were young and playing sports, that there's when the coach is like, hey, win or lose, just go have fun. I'm like, yeah. Is that really the right message? I don't know that I totally agree with that. Yes, we should have fun. No, we shouldn't hate ourselves if we lose. But, it's going to be more fun if we win, right? We get ice cream if we win. Losers don't get ice cream. That's I think the thing that can get overlooked, right? It's the goal isn't to, like I think Chance or somebody said, like a comedy show. If I want to go to a comedy show, I'll go to a comedy show. I don't want to, be in the dojo and it be a comedy show there. I want to focus on getting better, and if I can do that and laugh and have a good time, then that's, all the better, right? That makes it even better. But, if you're not, the guy who loves to walk will walk a lot further, but if you're not walking towards a destination, then what the hell are you doing?
Just walking around in circles. I think at that point. Isaac, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I grew up in a pretty serious household, right? And so for me, I didn't quite understand humor the way that maybe most people would. So my kind of indoctrination to humor was in the Marine Corps, and it's not necessarily a healthy sense of humor. It's kind of dark. It's kind of, Shaun talks about knowing the right place to have humor, and as a culture, Marines don't understand that. We understand humor as a coping mechanism for the most part, and it's always going to be at the most inappropriate time. And so for me, again, I'll fall back on culture is, I surround myself. It's probably why a lot of my employees are veterans, and my general manager is a Marine veteran, and we're able to use humor to get through tough things. Like, oh man, we have to run, like, we're short on staff this week. My manager and I are running, 14-hour days for probably 2 weeks straight. And we're going to say some things to each other that are wildly inappropriate, but we're going to laugh, and then we're going to get through, and it's going to be, a positive experience. Also understanding the times to be serious, but for me, like, I'm going to get that point across, but I'm always going to end up like making sure and ensuring that they understand, like, do you get what I'm telling you? Confirm that you understand what I'm telling you. And then I'm going to do something to lighten that mood right after. And I think it's a default thing, but it's allowed me, at least in my perspective, to create a pretty awesome culture where now I have people who like just want to come work for us because of the culture we've made. And so I attribute that to the Marine Corps. And when things really, really suck, I had leadership who was really good at just saying some off the wall wild thing. And you're like, did First Sergeant really just say that? Like, you just kind of start laughing. But it could be a really serious moment, but it allows us to have that reset. And then you can actually go into a serious talk and it not be clouded with this negative film or negative lens. And it's hard to learn or take in information if you're too in your head. And so if you can lighten that mood and get someone back to a baseline and then actually have like a serious conversation, they're able to actually learn a lot easier and more effective and more efficiently. And then it's like, okay, awesome. Like, let's move forward, and you have to do this. But they're better able to receive it because they're not still replaying everything in their head. They're actually able to come to the present moment and be, it's kind of, that Zen. I'm not good at meditating, but I'm really good at dark humor. And so if I see one of my employees, or especially, again, having a lot of vets, they might have moments where you can tell they're not there. They're thinking through they're in another world right now. And I'm going to crack a joke and you can immediately see them come to present. It's like, cool, you with me? Awesome. Like, let's go. And I think that's super important. And so for me, I might not be the best example of being able to balance fun and humor, because I have also worked in civilian, areas where they did not understand at all. And then I just chalked it up as a culture thing. And I needed to go find a different place that had the culture that I could align with.
I have this great example from when we were overseas, and we had just had a pretty rough day the day before. A couple guys got injured. It was everyone was in a very serious mood, and everyone was kind of like, oh, geez, we've got to go out again. Here's another patrol. Probably going to get lit up again. This is going to be a bad day. And the patrol commander, I don't know, I can't even remember what the joke was, but it was something sly. It was offhand. It was just kind of out of it, and we all started giggling. And then once one person started giggling, it kind of filtered around the crew, and he was like, okay, good. Let's look at the map. And everyone just snapped right back to it and went back to the serious part of the job. But it's such a great example of being able to use something so innocuous as a joke, or a sly comment, or just a real good piece of wit that snaps people back into reality of, oh, right, okay, we're all still human. Yep, we're all stressed out. Okay, now we can get back to the job at hand. I think that's such an important point. Yeah, what do you got, Isaac?
Well, and Shaun said, there's two versions of fun. Well, the dichotomy of that is there's two versions of serious. And you can be serious and not actually focused because you're so stuck behind something that's running through your head. And so sometimes that coping mechanism of fun, which, I'm really kind of prone to fall into, is the thing that helps me get into the appropriate level of serious for the situation. And so again, everyone has their own ways of coping, but I do think, there's a really good, I love that Shaun brought that up, that kind of, there's two levels of fun, because there's a dichotomy there of two levels of serious. And are you in the appropriate level of serious? And sometimes that little insert of humor or insert of fun is what allows you to reset and actually find the appropriate level of serious for the moment.
It's a great angle. I like this. And I'm wondering now, I can only use experience from the military and, the jiu-jitsu mats and things, but I'm wondering high level athletes. I mean, Shaun, Sara, you guys have been coaching for a long time. Is it similar in that you can utilize that kind of mindset to snap people back into it, or is it different? Sara, I'm going to come to you on this. What do you think?
So with my experience, that's athlete to athlete. Like I have some people that I've worked with and that I've trained alongside that they prefer things to be serious, and like that, injecting fun in there would be unwelcome. And then I've had the other end of the spectrum of people getting ready for serious MMA fights, and they're in the back giggling and playing like fun, relaxing, just, off the wall type of music. So, like everybody has like a different personality, everybody, so it's really like unique to the individual in my experience with coaching.
Yeah. I was wondering about that specifically, and I'm wondering, how do you enjoy the process though when things get tough, when especially either as a coach and an athlete? How do you actually work through those difficult times and have a good time doing it?
So I started out, I've changed so much as an athlete. Like I've competed now for like over 30 years. And in the beginning, it was always serious all the time. And I think that being in like more male dominated sports, I felt like I was the whole representation of women's wrestling as an individual. So I felt like I carried a lot of that. And so and then the same thing with women's fighting, like there wasn't very many other females around. And so I felt like I had to always show that I was there for a serious reason. I wasn't there to meet guys. I wasn't there, for any other reason but to pursue my goals. So I think I kept a serious attitude a lot longer. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I had to fend for myself. Like wrestling is not so different than the military. So when people are kind of giving you shit and, and the jokes get really bad and they're going to find anything they can to like mess with you and pick on you and like take your biggest things and just put it on display. As many more people that hear it, the better, and you better be able to roll with that. If you want to be part of the group, you better be able to fire something back at them and laugh it off. No matter how low they go, it is a form of bonding, being able to like kind of roast each other pretty good. So that was one area that was probably the exception. But then as I've gotten older as an athlete, I have started to realize that I can have so much more fun in the midst of working. I don't have to work and then have fun. And a great example, I have a jiu-jitsu gym and we have a guy in there and this dude is always smiling. He's very talented, very athletic, but you can never look at his face and tell how the role is going at all. And I even said later, I was like, man, I aspire to enjoy jiu-jitsu as much as he does, because he could be getting absolutely annihilated by a black belt. And he's just like, oh, look, I want to do this. He's just like almost an overgrown kid. And he's doing great. He's smiling. He's not doing great. He's smiling. And I was like, that's how you do it. That's how you do life, man. You just kind of just smile and enjoy it, whether it's ups or downs. And like, so he is now like what I aspire to. He's my goals in jiu-jitsu, is to enjoy it that way as much as I'm able to, because I started out so serious.
Got to find that gold standard, right? And be able to like, oh, that's what I want to go after. I like it. Shaun, you got any thoughts on any of this?
So I was thinking about what the panel said, and I believe that we're an anomalous panel, but we are a unique panel in the sense that we all came up through reasonably extreme circumstances within our careers, I'll call it. And so, but when we were kids, we were who we were. And then we signed on some dotted line to do some extreme thing. and we were still that kid. But we were in a construct that wasn't us. It was the construct. And the construct, we'll call it the military. The construct could have been the mats. The construct is all around us. We step into a construct as the person that we are. And then you get to decide who you are in that construct. Do you stay true to yourself, or do you become what you believe you're supposed to become? And so I'll give an example. When I've always been a pretty serious guy, but when I have fun, I have ridiculous fun. When I was in the military in basic training and coming up through the early years, I was a super serious kid, like really serious, hyper focused on kicking that ass. I loved it. And so I found my way through serious Shaun, and I had a reputation for it. I clowned around for sure, but it was way less at the start than it was at the back end. Because once I got pretty freaking good at things, then I get to be who I am. And I think that's a really important point, that if you're a newbie coach, if you're a newbie soldier, if you're a newbie wrestler, if you're a newbie whatever, try to stay true to yourself, but the construct will shape you in those early phases. Be aware of that. Don't think that it won't shape you, because it will. But try to remember who you are when you stepped into it. And don't cling to that, by the way, because at the back end, you might be a better version of yourself. But try to remember who you are when you step into any construct, observe yourself throughout the construct, and see what you are becoming. So for me, at the back end of my military career, I was pretty competent, pretty comfortable, and that allowed me to be fully who I was, which is not the case when I was in basic training, because I didn't understand the construct. So it takes time whenever you step into a new thing to be comfortable with the thing in order to be the thing in the thing. And so all of this takes time. So never step into something new and think that your casual sense of humor the day before is going to be readily available to you on day one of that bonkers new trajectory that you've just signed on the dotted line for. Everything takes calibration to the room and to yourself in the moment. We all change through the phases of our life. And we also all change through the phases of our construct choices. I'll leave it at that, see where it goes.
I want to go around again on that one. John, you got any thoughts on this? What do you got? Oh, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Okay. I don't know why my mouse is having trouble. Yeah, that was quite a lot to unpack. I think it's absolutely the case, right? When you know, I know for me, when I talked about this a lot, when I joined the military, I was a class clown, right? And that's like, was not going to make me successful in the Marine Corps, at least not right away. You know, I needed to be very, very serious through boot camp, through, you know, infantry training, you know, as I went along. And then once you kind of earn the right to start becoming yourself. And, you know, I think with a lot of, there are a lot of, you know, there are people who are serious. And I've been on this big kick lately of reading the memoirs of fighters. So like GSP, you know, recently read his, and you know, he's a guy who's not going to screw around in training, right? It's very, very serious. But you know, when he goes out afterwards, then he's going to have a good time. You know, the Rick's and Gracie's great, really good memoir. You know, I mean, very, very serious, and that's how he was kind of raised to be. You know, so I think there are people that's how they enjoy learning. That's how they enjoy training. You know, one of the, you know, we work with, you know, somebody shooting or somebody in swimming or a hard skill that someone is not good at. They have a tendency, and kind of like Isaac talked about, to get serious to the point that it's detrimental, right? The parasympathetic nervous system kind of, you know, throws them into fight or flight mode. And, you know, they are not going to perform well at that level. So, at that point, being able to make them laugh or throw out something to kind of take them out of fight or flight and put them back into the mode where they have the ability to learn and improve is important.
I could not agree with that more. Sara, you got thoughts on any of this?
Sorry. Actually, I was gonna tell you guys I have to go. I have to go. I have a meeting with my kid's teacher. I didn't know how long it would take. I thought it would be an
No worries.
hour.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all good. No worries.
like,
Any
Mom
any
life
final
is
thoughts?
very. I think that it definitely is tough. Just as we were talking about before, of like being able to read a room, is that there definitely is a time and a place to inject who you are, and like each situation is different, because I in some places it wouldn't be right for me to inject my style or my, like the way that I have fun into certain situations. So I think that is just, using basic skills of like understanding to say like, okay, this is where I can be myself. But I mean, like each of us kind of wears we're still ourselves, but we're going to act differently at a bar than we are like at church, than we are going to be at, like a serious presentation to, so like, that's what I'm saying. Like we have different layers of fun and we have different types of fun. And you can't like, it's really an awesome thing if you can really just be yourself at places. Like, I think that's probably like, that's the job you'd probably be happiest doing, but definitely making sure that you're being intelligent about that,
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, I really do appreciate you being on here, and I'm gonna bug you again to come back on the show, and we'll make sure that my apologies for not giving you the timings ahead of time. That's my
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I didn't know.
It's all good. No worries.
Thank you,
We'll
guys.
talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Isaac, you got any thoughts on anything we've gone over?
Yeah. So this is a great conversation. I'm enjoying this. So when I went through obviously like high school and then the start of college before I did the normal degenerate thing and dropped out and signed the dotted line, I had some kind of just crazy traumatic things in childhood, which made me kind of be a really kind of serious kid. And then in college, I got into competitive powerlifting and bodybuilding and ended up, going to the world championship in powerlifting. And the team I was kind of representing was a very serious, like I was the youngest by generations. Like it was, I was 18, competing on the world platform with 30, 40, and 50-year-olds. And so it was like a hardcore, you walk in, there's metal blaring, there's weights slamming on the ground, chalk everywhere, and just these serious guys. And so I kind of ingrained in that. It was just a very serious environment. And so when I went into the Marine Corps, I think that did serve me for, basic and for ITB and for the follow-on stuff. And it was kind of, that was who I was. But then it got to a point where, I got to the fleet and I realized like, this isn't exactly the right vibe, I guess you could say, of what the actual, job was like. And I saw people joking around and having a good time and like being able to bring an actual sense of reality to a situation that for a young guy can seem kind of surreal. And it made me recalibrate who I was and realizing that, what I had experienced through my life didn't have to be as traumatic as I was making it. And it didn't have to be as serious as I was making it. And honestly, it was, maybe I was making that, hard, rugged mindset kind of an addiction to an identity because maybe that was a coping mechanism at the time. And I realized how to have fun in serious moments and how to joke around. And eventually that kind of became my identity to the point where once I was being put in leadership positions, I didn't read the room well. I tried to kind of fill the room and be the room. And if I wasn't allowed in that room, okay, that's fine, I'll leave. But what I found was once I started doing that, people kind of conformed, and I actually got to see other people lighten up. And, you know, people come to me, and it actually opened doors where I could better take care of my Marines and, you know, bridge gaps that used to be, you know, people didn't talk to each other across certain aisles. And, you know, we didn't work with certain people or certain positions or certain MOSs because, you know, they're different and whatever. And it's like, really? I don't know. And so once I decided to not try and conform to a specific room, but instead just go in and, you know, either they conform to me or I leave, things got way easier. And I actually was allowed in way more rooms than I was before. And so, you know, maybe this is just a narcissistic, conceited idea of being like, I'm not really going to conform to what people want me to act like. But it's actually served me and my people really, really well. And so I just, as Sara had mentioned, like wanting to be that person who can be smiling, you know, in all situations. I was just blessed, I guess, to kind of figure that out a little bit earlier on and realize like I'm okay getting a door slammed on my face or getting screamed at by, you know, a master sergeant because I was smiling when I shouldn't have smiled. Because then in the very next room, there's going to be a colonel who is going to talk to me first because I'm smiling and I look comfortable in the situation while everyone else is pissing their pants. And so like it's just, I realized if I'm just myself, I'm going to fit with the right people. And those right people tend to be the people who actually make movement happen.
This is a great point, and especially about the military in general, is the fact when you go through your training, it is an indoctrination, right? They're trying to change who you are to be something else. And then once you're done that training, then it shouldn't be a continual process, right? When you get to a point where you're at a unit and you've done all your training, that's where you learn. That's where you adjust. That's where you adapt. That's where you get to become the soldier that you're going to become. But I mean, sure, we all know people who are still in that recruit mindset for long after they get to the unit. They don't have that ability to be themselves as the soldier rather than just be themselves or the soldier, one or the other. Shaun, you got any thoughts on any of this?
I do. I think it's really important to state this next piece. And I put up a photo a couple of days ago on my Instagram post, and maybe it was yesterday. And it's me when I was 7 years old with the big British ears and the kind of smirky smile and a little bit of mischievous twinkle in my eye, as it were. As a character when I was a kid, I'm a character now. And I was a character in the Army. And so that's never been beaten out of me, ever. I am who I am. And no construct has ever stripped it out of me. In fact, I've injected my personality into many constructs. I think that's what we're supposed to do. So when I was in basic, I took things serious, man. But I also had a smirk about me. I had a twinkle in my eye. I was usually up to no good, not in a mean-spirited way, but I did like poking and prodding, as I still do. And so in basic training, a sergeant, we were out on a range run out into the middle of Nowheresville with all of the weight. And he said, you know, he hit me with a one-liner, and I looked back at him, and maybe it was the look in my eye. Maybe I just didn't say the thing that he wanted to hear. But he frickin' went mental. And he ran me like a dog. Way off into the middle of Nowheresville where no one was around. And he put the suffer on me. And I've never forgotten that. Because up until that point, I had conformed. I had almost given away my liberty to some degree. My personal essence, I'd almost like given it away. I was moving more towards becoming a robot. And so in that moment, it's not that I flared out, but I let myself be myself, and I responded the way that I like to think and the way I like to speak. And it didn't fit the moment. It wasn't robotic enough. I paid the price for it. And so I've never forgotten the moment, because it is a lesson in life when you come to this sort of realization that by speaking out authentically, it shouldn't come with a punishment, but sometimes it does. And it's what you do with that in the moment and for the rest of your life. Because life is unfair. We all know that. But if it's unfair and you're not who you are, true to yourself, it's double unfair. So I don't mind a little bit of unfairness as long as I'm who I am. It's worse when life is unfair and you're fake-eroniing it, or you're a faker, or you're not Shaun, you're some robot, and life is still unfair. What the heck, bro? That sucks. And so I've never regretted, it's not that I chirped at the sergeant. I've never regretted using the look in my eye and paying that price, because it was a lifelong, invaluable lesson that taught me a lot about the construct in the moment, but more importantly, taught me a lot about myself. If you are truly who you are every day, there'll be consequences every single day. Someone won't like the way you smile at them. Someone won't like the way you frown at them. But at least you'll be who you are. And if you're who you are and you pay attention to the rooms all around you while you're being you, if you're cool, you'll find a way to calibrate who you really are so that you're not a jerk in that moment. You're just being authentic. You'll have enough tools to be able to navigate through life being true to yourself while not constantly picking up scars along the way because you don't know how to play with other people. So life is a learning journey, man. And until you put your foot down and be who you truly are, you're not learning.
This is a fantastic point. I actually been telling my boys this for quite a while. Whenever they get picky at each other and they start prodding and they start poking and they start fighting and they start blah blah blah, or they'll try to play together and they will end up having a bit of a conflict. And I've told both my boys this growing up throughout life is if you can't lose, you can't play. And I think this is part of what you're saying, Shaun, is the fact that if we're unwilling to give up a little bit within an environment, we're not willing to accept that the culture is slightly different and I need to adjust to whatever room I'm going into a little bit, we're not going to have many people to play with. If that makes sense. And I think, Isaac, you said it as well. What do you got,
I'm saying
Shaun?
the opposite. Sorry.
No?
I'm saying the opposite. I'm not saying if we can't give up a little bit. What I'm saying is the reverse. If we can't put our all into it, we'll never learn how much we've got to give up. So you've got to go all in. You got to be who you are and face the consequences, learn the lesson, improvise, adapt, and overcome, move down the pathway and do it better, of course. But if you're constantly in a state of negotiation with yourself, if you've never actually really fully committed to who you are on a semi-regular basis, you don't even know yourself. You don't even know how much you're supposed to pull back. You don't even know how you're supposed to modulate. You don't even understand winning or losing. If someone stood in the middle and not fully lost and not fully won. And so I think it comes down to, for most people, we all could put all of our chips in just a little bit more vigorously on a daily basis.
This is interesting. John, you got any thoughts on that?
Yes. I think, I kind of agree with both sentiments. And I think when I explain it, hopefully it makes sense. But, if you cannot graduate from Marine Corps boot camp as the same person that you went in as, right? You don't. If you did, then I don't know, somehow you didn't learn anything. So, or like Marcus Aurelius has said, you can't step in the same river because, twice you're not the same person and it's not the same river. So the, boot camp is a environment where you've got to conform to a large degree. you are going to be, you're going to bend like a willow or you're going to snap like an oak. But when you come out of that, you're going to start bending back. If you go back to the way that you were in high school, then there's something wrong with you there too. Right. You've put more tools in your toolbox. You're carrying a heavier load. You're a different person. You have more, you have a lot more to work with. And as you grow, you continually do that. I think there's a lot of folks in the military that, get out and, they, have for, and here's where I absolutely agree with Shaun. I mean, once you're in and once things have kind of settled, then yeah, you've got to figure out how do I, now I'm a Marine, or I'm a soldier, or I'm whatever I am. I've got to operate in this environment, but I've got to do so in a way that's true to who I am. I think a lot of people and a lot of the reason a lot of veterans have difficulties is that they get out and they really have no idea who they are. Like they've been, wearing a uniform so long that it's kind of, sunk into them. It's become, and one of the things that Sara said, which really, it's almost, in a way it's sad, like she's said, and I've talked with women in the military that they are like, hey, I not only have to do the things that a Marine does or a fighter does or whatever the case is, but I'm representing all women. All right, I've got this massive freaking load that none of us ever had to carry. But on the positive side of that, it's probably pushed those people to be a lot better. Maybe they have bad dreams or PTSD from it, but that carrying a heavy load makes you stronger. All right. So, being put in that situation where you're, you feel that you're, responsible to, responsible for an entire, gender. I mean, that's a pretty heavy load to have to carry. And if you can successfully do that and come out on the other side, healthy and happy, then, I'd say you're doing pretty damn well.
I think this also applies in the fact on the opposite end of the spectrum there is the fact that if you have someone, say a man who goes into a female dominated realm and they do really well there, they're going to adjust the opinions of the rest of the collective to a higher degree, right? So if there were women that came into the military that were in my unit that were just awesome. And so my view of women in the military came up, but there were also people who were just crap. And that so it adjusts, I think, how we view them in the moment. But it's a great point in the fact that it is a very difficult position to be in. Isaac, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I feel like it goes back to authenticity, and pressure and feeling like you have the weight of the world on you. I try and take a very stoic approach because at the end of the day, though, I would say I'm a fairly faith-driven and religious person, but at the end of the day, on this realm that we're in, I'm going to die, and then probably 10 years after that, the only people that will remember me are my kids, and so like it doesn't matter at all. Like it doesn't. It doesn't matter. And so if I can do something while I'm here that makes life better for someone around me, then I'm doing something positive here. And so for me, like when I was in the military, I didn't mind getting my butt chewed or getting beat up out behind the building because I seemed like I was disrespectful to a superior, because it was that same demeanor to that superior that was like, I like this guy. Like, I need him to do a task for me. Right. And so for me, it was just being authentic and understanding that none of this matters. If I get beat up by somebody, I'm going to get over it and feel fine a day later. Like, it doesn't matter. If I get yelled at, boo-hoo, I'll get over it a few minutes later. Like, it's okay. And to be able to just be authentically me did more good. And I remember even going through, after boot camp, we have in the Marine Corps, like ITB, which is our infantry training. And I remember and that they had us sit down in classes, and there was one class where we watched a lot of like footage, like combat footage, just to try and get us to kind of normalize that what we see is not like what we see in the movies. And I was sitting next to a guy who had already been in the Marine Corps for a while. He was a Humvee driver. And we were watching this scene, and it was an IED explosion in Afghanistan. And I noticed that my buddy next to me was just wide eyes, like glued to the screen, just stuck. So I kind of shook him. I was like, hey, what's going on? He goes, that the second vehicle in the convoy is mine. And so he was in that moment. He had to get up and leave. He walked out. And so for me, I was like, I could tell he was stuck in it. So me being who I am, like a few minutes later, I start walking, outside, and I see him there, and I trip and fall like right in front of him. And he kind of looks at me, and I was like, sorry, flat tire. And he just lost it. Like he started laughing. And immediately, again, you see him come back to present. I was like, you good, man? He goes, yeah, I'm good. All right, let's get back to the class. Like, let's go. And that type of behavior, anyone else probably could have been like, you're an a-hole, right? Like insensitive. But because I knew him and knew the culture that we had, I knew that would bring him back. And so for me, the being able to calibrate is knowing which rooms I can go in, which rooms I can't. Because if I have to go into a room and I can't, it's not the right culture, I know I'm not going to conform to it. I suck at that. That's why a lot of people in my career in the military either loved me or hated me. And I moved around a little bit, but once I found the right area, I excelled really fast. And it's because, you have to do what you do best. And what you do best isn't necessarily a skill set or a job. It's your characteristics. It's your personality. It's the underlying foundation of who you are as a person. And that then brings everything else out.
It's such a great point. Shaun, you got any thoughts on any of that?
I do agree with that, Isaac. And I'm going to move directly from that because there's not much more to add. I'm going to address something that John said, and it's not that he said anything wrong or anything right. It's just what he said. And so I want to shine the spotlight on it because it'll draw out more conversation. So women in the military, when they were first coming into the military, up here in Canada as the example, I was a young infantry sergeant, hadn't entered into special operations yet, and I was an instructor on a heavy machine gun course that was being run down in Washington. And there was a young female private on this course, the very first infantry female in Canada. I'm not going to say her name, but she was a good young private. And she was put in my section, put in my small detachment, so that I'd be her direct instructor and her direct supervisor, if you will. And the reason for that, I believe, as it was explained to me anyway, and I agree with the explanation, it's because I was firm but fair. I was really hard on everyone around me to the standard. Like, if you don't meet the standard, oh man, there's going to be trouble. But if you meet the standard, I'm fair. And it doesn't matter to me how tall you are, what color you are, what gender you are, what religion you are. None of that stuff matters. You either perform or you don't. And so my penchant for fairness is what I believe led me to being her instructor in that case. Now, when she came into the system, all eyes were on her to see how she was going to perform. And she was kind of like the leading edge of the spear that was starting to enter into the military psyche at the time. And so there were a ton of people fascinated with how it was all going to play out. And there were a number of men in the military who wanted her to dismally fail. And that wasn't me. I wanted her to succeed as equally as I wanted every other man that I was responsible for to succeed. So again, don't care about the gender. But with all eyes on her, the pressure was on her for sure. And it's these moments that can teach us a lot about the person and teach us a lot about ourselves. So, looking at anyone who steps into we'll call it groundbreaking role, there are immense pressures in the moment that typically are invisible to all those around them, unless the people around them are calibrated to what's going on, are sensitive to what is actually occurring. And so the sensitivity of the moment makes or breaks all things. If we don't care, it's broken. If we care too much, it's broken. It's our job to find the right amount of care in the moment, for the moment. And so looking at anyone who steps again into a groundbreaking role, male or female, there's a lot to learn in that, not just about the person, but also about ourselves.
I have a question on this, and I'm wondering, it might be personal, might be not, but I'm wondering, in those situations, as a groundbreaker or as a entering into something that you have really no context for outside in the rest of your life, I'm wondering if there's been a point in time where you guys realized that you've taken something way too seriously, like in a moment, in a flash of like, oh dang, I screwed this up. I'm all over the place, and realized that you needed to inject a little bit of fun, a little bit of joviality, a little bit of engagement. And I'm wondering, when that happened, what changed? Like, what was the thing that clicked in your head that said, okay, no, I'm too serious right now. I can't be effective. What are your guys' thoughts? Isaac, I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's moments where I feel like maybe, I've taken certain projects too seriously. And for me, I get into these modes of work where, to me, 16-hour days don't seem crazy. 7-day work weeks don't seem out of the norm. I mean, everyone on this panel has done similar work overseas. You don't really get to pick your hours, right? You are on, especially if you're doing an op or even a workup, like you're training. So that is the schedule. That's the cycle. When you're out, you're a civilian and you have, a wife and kids and a farm and like all these other things. You forget that they don't have the same level of understanding of work that I do. And so there's been times where, I've been like in work mode, and even in work mode, I'm having fun, quote unquote, but it's not fun to my wife. It's not fun to my daughter. It's not fun to the people outside of work that might rely on me. And so it takes a good partner, which I'm blessed to have a pretty awesome wife who doesn't mind, telling me when I'm being an ass, for lack of a better term. And, me being able to trust her judgment that she's going to let me go as far as she can possibly handle, understanding the vision and mission that I have. But before it goes too far, she'll let me know, like, hey, you need to step away, and we need you here for a few moments. And then I also trust that whenever I've given as much as she absolutely requires, she's going to say, all right, you can go back to work. And we've been blessed to kind of figure out that level of communication, which I think a lot of people don't have, because maybe they're scared of their partners or they don't want to be, you'll have, heck, we had like gunnies who would never go home and they would go deployment after deployment after deployment just because they didn't want to be with their significant other. I think that's nuts. But for me, like, she's really great at understanding you need to work, but we need you here. So I'm going to pull you in when we need you. And then I'm going to send you back out again, not just for her, but for me too. Cause she knows when I'm going to snap, cause I can't tell when I'm about to burn out until I burn out. And so she's able to gauge that for me, and she'll pull me in and say like, hey, we need to take a break. We need to go on a trip. We need to, go to the lake house. We need to do something. And it helps me reset. But it's taken me having a lot of failures and then a really awesome wife to really get a handle on it.
Yeah, no doubt. My wife does the same thing every so often when I'm just locked into work mode. She's like, nope, we're going for a walk. And I'm like, but no. And she's like, no, we're going for a walk. I'm like, okay, I guess we're going for a walk. John, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think, I don't know who said it, but there's the saying that if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. So I think for a lot of us probably fall into that category where it's it is fun for us, even though it's day after day and hour after hour. And I'm also fortunate to have a wife who's very understanding, but also when it's time to not be understanding, is that. I think, it really comes down to commitment. I think for, like I said, winning is fun. Like being good at your business is fun. Being good at sports is fun. So, if we're really committed to achieving some level of success at something, then, there's fun there, whether it's, the type 2 fun, type 1 fun, coping, there's some sort of fun. So we enjoy what we're doing. And, it's absolutely critical that you make sure that that's us having fun isn't impacting our, the people that depend on us. When a perfect example of it was when I first got to Force Recon in the Marine Corps. It was just the accepted order of business that you train hard all week, and then Friday night you would go out and burn it down. Right? You would stay out at the bars until they closed, and then you would call your wife and she'd come and get you. And that's the way it worked. And it was maybe not terribly healthy, but it was kind of important, as a new guy, not a young guy, but a new guy there, that was the culture. And that was, at those, bar stools, I learned a lot of lessons about combat, about life, about how the organization worked. But there, it wasn't too long before there came a point where, the wife was like, nah, you can walk home, and we're not doing this anymore for a while. So, that was, but there was also, I think, she had the recognition that, when you're training at a high level, you've got to have some fun, right? You've got to be able to blow off a little bit of steam so that you can come home and be a good husband and father and things like that. So I think it's probably different for not everybody, but I think there are certainly different ways of kind of coping with that and interjecting fun into the mix while making sure that you are meeting your obligations and you're not, alienating. We did at, in the Marine Corps and Special Operations, particularly in Force Recon, I think I know one other guy who's still married from my time. I think we just hit 32, a little over 32 years of marriage. And it would not happen if one, she wasn't a saint, but two, if we both didn't give and take, and have the good communication like Isaac talked about.
Yeah, it's such a I don't know many people who are still in the military from my time in who are still married or aren't on their second or third or fourth marriage at this point. Shaun, you got any points on this?
I do. Sorry about the lighting. I'll adjust it here in a couple of minutes. But when I came through the system early on, there was an old saying, and it was train hard, play hard. And I'm sure we've all got our own versions of that. We've all heard that version before or something similar to it. And I took that to heart. I took that as a command. And so I trained really hard and I played really hard. And so my friends did also. And it became the norm. So our normal was definitely abnormal as compared to regular society. I'll call it regular society. Now, what did that set me up for? The rest of my life. I'm still that way. I train hard and I play hard. And so my idea of playing hard nowadays is not, heading out to the bar and getting right after it, because I'm not a drinker for many years now. But I still find ways to play hard. And I'll be playing hard today when I jump on my freaking single speed and smash on that thing up in the mountains. I'm still true to myself. What I was taught when I was a young guy. The train hard, play hard. And it felt right to me then, and it feels right to me now. And so I'm going to take this question and play with it a little bit. I've taken lots of things too seriously, but you got to take things too seriously to understand what is too serious. And you can't, it's not a one and done. It's not remember that time in grade 6 where I was super serious with a teacher? Learned my lesson. Life is full of lessons constantly. And so I do take things too seriously from time to time. But that's what you got to do, again, to get context on what too serious means in the moment for you. And if you haven't played with that for a while, maybe it's time to get too serious again, if you haven't done that in a few years. And so I'm going to give an example that is, again, going to change the question a little bit. When I was ultra endurance racing in 24-hour solo mountain bike races, I was a pretty serious guy. As a coach, I'd be on the start line with some of my athletes that I was coaching, all of us looking at each other serious. And then there was a little bit of a pattern started forming where one athlete would want me to check a little bit of this, one athlete would want a knuckle bump, and one athlete would want the nod, and one athlete, they all had their little rhythm, their little battle rhythms on the start line. And they were looking to me for that, in that serious moment, to inject not a little bit of fun, but a little bit of namaste. And that namaste moment came in all kinds of forms. And it was my job to recognize the pattern for what it was, and then deliver in the moment the next time, and the next time, and the next time. So too serious and a little fun is, again, a really broad spectrum of fun, as we started off the show with. And I think that you've got to do things wrong to do things right. And the only way that you can understand that is to recognize patterns, understand that everything is visible if you spend enough time looking at it. And you might not see it in the moment, but you'll see it a month later, or a day later, or a year later, if you look for the pattern that you didn't see on the day. So my job as a serious coach was to recognize that need for the knuckle bump in the moment, bring down the seriousness of things so that that individual could feel like, yes, we're in this together. And isn't that what it's all about? The fun part, is it just fun for us? Or is it more fun when it's fun for the person standing next to us as well? We've already covered it. A shared fun is way more fun than just our own little fun. And so on every start line of every day that you're involved in, if you see the moment, spread the fun.
That's a great point. I'm really digging this. I got one more question on this before we kind of wrap her up for the afternoon, and it's to that point, Shaun, which is there a lesson? Is there an insight? Is there something about fun that you've learned on your journeys that you wish more people knew? And I think to your point, Shaun, that is one of those things. But John, I'm going to come to you. Any lessons or insights, pieces of wisdom, perhaps?
Sorry, there we go. I think that most people that well, I'll speak for myself, for people I've trained or worked with. When we operate, you're not going to get really, really good until you can start having fun with whatever that you're doing. There's absolutely time to be serious, and you can be serious and still be having fun. I think we hadn't really kind of connected those things. Very, very serious. If you're rolling, in the gym, if you're running, if you're on the range, shooting, in the CQB house. That's as serious as it gets, right? And it's a blast, right? So when you start having fun, at those moments, used to have a boss who would always make the analogy of, at the 5 seconds left on the clock in a basketball game that's tied, or you're down by 1 or whatever, there are a whole lot of people that do not want the ball, right? Absolutely do not want the ball. Like, they're going to turn away, they're going to defend, they're going to do whatever, but they do not want to be the guy taking that last minute shot. And there are certain people that do. There are certain people that are going to be begging for the ball. And those people, I guarantee you, are having fun, right? They had fun in practice, they have fun in the game, and they are going to have fun, taking that critical shot, or whether it's a shot with a basketball, a shot with an M4. It's being good. Like, winning is fun, being good is fun, and being putting the time and effort and energy into being the best at something, or at least the best that you can be at something is a lot of fun. So it can be a very serious business, but you can still enjoy yourself and have a good time with it.
I love that. And you're right. We didn't make that connection at all in the fact that they're not mutually exclusive. You can be serious and have fun while doing it. It can be a very serious environment and still enjoy your time doing it. Isaac, you got any points to add?
For me, I guess a lesson that I've learned is that internally, processing something is a very personal thing. So if you are in a serious environment, as John said, like, you can have fun and be serious at the same time, and understand that the environment externally doesn't have to fully match the environment internally. And I think that's, at a base level, just stoicism at a very base level, that, like, your external environment will change and ebb and flow. And there will be times of serious, there will be times of excitement. There will be times of, somber and sad, but internally your state should be somewhat stable. And for me, I try and keep my internal stable state a kind of sense of fun and excitement and curiosity and wonder, and understanding that winning is fun, but in order to win, you have to fail a lot. And unfortunately, in combat as well, and in business and in athletic endeavors, and no matter what you're doing, like, failure is a prerequisite to success. And so if you can maybe not have fun because of the failures, but have fun in the progress and progression and insights that you learn in those failures, and whenever you were able to apply them and it works, and you're like, oh, like, I learned something now. I failed before. I didn't, take a corner the right way in a race, or I didn't, maybe do something that I should have done, but this time I did, and I made that connection. I should internally, like, heighten that response to that connection, because that's what's going to ingrain it now for forever. That's what's going to blueprint it. If I just go on like, whatever, I might make the same mistake I did last time the next time. But if I can have this state of curiosity and fun, and when I make a mistake, understand the seriousness of it, draw what I need to learn, but then actually have fun whenever I implement it the right way the next time. I think that is something that I missed when I was younger, and I repeated a lot of mistakes. And as I got older, I started to make that connection, and suddenly it was easier to learn.
I agree with you, and I think also sometimes those mistakes are the most fun things you can do. Right? Like, there are some hilarious mistakes that have come, or hilarious times that have come out of direct mistakes that just was like, man, I can't believe that just happened. That's awesome. Shaun, you got any points on this?
Yeah, that can happen, except when the mistakes are super serious. So there's that. I'll say this, that, the fun, definition of fun, we'll call it, or I'll call it the definition of fun, is only contextualized against how old you are and what you've done in your life. So if you're 12 and you think fun is like a clown coming to your birthday party, that's your idea of fun, then that's fun. That's not my idea of fun. In fact, clowns at birthday parties irritate me. And so you got to know who you are. And I'm being a bit glib, of course, but you got to know who you are. And so that's something that we all could chew on today. Because if you haven't established a baseline of what your idealized version of that fun person is or was, then how do you understand fun? And how do you come back to that fun individual that you've identified maybe later today? 4 years from now, how do you get back to it? Because you'll have to. There's times in life where it kind of looks like that. Downhill. Sometimes it looks like that. Uphill. And in those two phases of life, you've got to have certain baseline understandings. And so take time to identify the last time you were your 100% most fun version. Because, I don't know, I'd put almost $1 million on the table that nobody on the panel on this call today was 100% fun yesterday. Because maybe we haven't thought about what 100% fun was supposed to be yesterday. What is my version of 100% fun yesterday? What will it be today? What will it be tomorrow? What will it be 4 years from now? Baselines need to be established. And so the lesson is think about who you want to be as a fun person, whatever that means to you, and then sear it into your mind. Carve it in a stone. Write it down on a piece of paper with magnificent calligraphy so that it's really important to you and you can always refer back to it. Maybe weeks, months, or years from now, when you can't even spell fun because you're not a fun person anymore because of the way life has maybe dragged you down. Baselines on all things are kind of important.
Just a little bit. Yeah. I think you're absolutely right on that one. Well, we're coming up on time right now. That was my last general question I had for you guys. And I'm wondering if you guys got any final thoughts, anything on having fun, anything that we've talked about today, anything at all that's still bubbling in the back of your brain. John, I'm going to hit you first. What do you got?
Sure. Only that, as I was thinking about this question, through the morning, I'm going to have some fun this weekend. I'm not quite sure what it's going to look like yet, but, I realize that, it's been a while since I've just said, hey, let's do something that's just absolutely fun with kind of no strings attached. So this weekend, it'll probably look like something in the woods, but I'm looking forward to it.
I like it. I'm in the same boat. I'm going hunting this afternoon, so I'm going to be out in the bush having type 2 fun. It's going to be good times. Isaac, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah. My final thought is understand your internal timing, your internal clock, especially, coming from the veteran community where you're not really in charge of your timing, your clock when you're in. So when you're out, it's really hard to gauge that. But sometimes when things are the most frustrating and decisions are the hardest to make, it's because you're too close to the scenery. Like you can't tell that there's a mountain if you're standing right in front of a tree. You have to be able to back out and get that 30,000 foot view and actually see the whole, battle map. Like you can't see the entire space if you're stuck in the dirt. So it takes being able to walk away and have some fun and let your subconscious do the unraveling and unpacking of the problems. And you can't have the subconscious work if your conscious is fully focused on it. So in those moments where things are getting too difficult and decisions are harder to make, step away, have some fun, don't think about the problem. And then when you go back, those solutions will start to pop out easier because you've allowed your subconscious to really get into the meat of it and start solving things.
Love it. Love it. Shaun, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, might as well throw another twist in right at the very end. I think that fun is something we all need to pursue. But it's interesting that probably everyone has already pre-identified the version of fun that they want to go do because they've had fun doing it in the past. How about this? Go do something that is ridiculous that you've never ever done before, and you question whether it's even going to be fun. That's fun. Because it's the unknown. It's the void. It's the chaos. It's the not being able to control the outcome that you've already controlled in your mind before you even leave your front door. Chance said, I'm going to go have some fun hunting. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. How about you trip over a log and break your leg within a minute? It ain't fun anymore. And so go do things without expectations of fun. Just go have fun. Maybe you'll have fun hunting, maybe you won't. The idea is just go have fun. See how it all plays out. And definitely don't precede your idea of what fun is. Just try to let it unfold.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I took my cousin out a couple of years ago for his first hunting trip, and I was so focused on getting an animal that I had a horrible time. The first couple of days was just me just driving. Got to get the work done. Got to get here. Look at this, blah, blah, blah. And I had presupposed that it was already going to happen. It was all going to be easy. And it led to not a great time until I was able to relax, which was on like day 3, where I finally was like, oh, okay. And I shook it all off and I was just like, enjoy the moments. And it was in those moments that we had the most fun throughout that experience. And it's such a great point. Any time that I presupposed it was going to be a great time, it was not quite as great as I thought it was going to be. And I think that's such a great point. So with that, I just want to say thank you guys again, John, Isaac, Shaun, and Sara. Just such a great conversation. I love talking, and this has been a lot of fun for me. So I hope it's been fun for you, and I hope we all learned a little bit about ourselves, about each other. Just been a fantastic conversation. So as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, see you all next week. Chimo.